Durante este Durante Conference 2021, tuvimos la oportunidad de conversar con Peter Cotorceanu. Peter asesora a instituciones financieras y personas de todo el mundo sobre la implementación de FATCA y CRS. Peter también proporciona asesoramiento fiscal transfronterizo de Estados Unidos para personas de alto patrimonio con conexiones en Estados Unidos. Es el CEO y fundador de GATCA and Trust Compliance Associates, LLC. No olvides suscribirte a Hablemos TV, el canal jurídico financiero.
So FATCA is a U.S. regime which was enacted in 2014 or became effective in 2014. And basically it's a regime that forces financial institutions outside of the United States, what they call foreign financial institutions, so for example Swiss banks or Luxembourg Insurance Company, to give information to the US about any US persons who have accounts there. So it's a disclosure regime where the US has imposed an obligation on foreign financial institutions to tell the US about their US account holders and to disclose information about the accounts, the amount of money in the accounts and so on. So first of all, CRS is sort of the global equivalent of FATCA. FATCA is US-centric. It was adopted by the US. It's about getting information to the US about US people. There are some agreements under FATCA where the US sends some data to other countries about residents of those countries with accounts in the US. But it's a limited amount of data. It's not particularly reciprocal. But FATCA has to have the US on one end of the transaction, whereas the global community decided after FATCA came into effect, we need a global equivalent. So if a French person has a bank account in Switzerland, France wants information about that. And if a Swiss person has an account in Hong Kong, Switzerland wants information about that. So the OECD, based in Paris, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, came up with a scheme called the Common Reporting Standard. And what it basically does is make a requirement that financial institutions in a country that has adopted CRS, which is now well over 100 countries, agree to send data about residents from other CRS countries back to those countries if they happen to have an account in the sending country. So it's sort of a global, automatic exchange of information. No request has to be made. Reports are filed annually. And the basic object is to prevent people hiding money outside their country and evading taxes on it. Well, trust companies and trustees are heavily impacted by CRS. The key term in CRS is a financial institution because financial institutions are the ones that have the reporting obligations. And a financial institution is a very broad term. It doesn't just apply to banks and insurance companies. It also covers commercial trust companies. And it includes almost all trusts, not all, but almost all trusts that are run by commercial trust companies will qualify as financial institutions for CRS purposes. So what a trust company needs to know is, are my trusts financial institutions? Most of them will be, almost all of them will be. And then what sort of reports do I need to send if I have people from another CRS country or from the US if it's governed by FATCA? What information do I need to send about which people? And so it has a huge impact. And if you know that you've got potential reporting obligations, then you need to explore what are the actual obligations you have. That's what a trust company needs to know. Well, I mean, basically to develop fact sheets and letters to explain here's how these regimes work. We have no option. We must comply, and you will be reported if you live in a country that has a reciprocal agreement with us, and here's the information that will be reported. And some countries actually mandate that if you're going to report somebody, you must tell them in advance what it exactly is that can be reported. Then you have to give them a chance to challenge that and say, well, I'm not really a reportable person, or the information you're sending is not accurate. Not many countries require that, but a few do. So basically it's a matter of informing your clients that there are these regimes in place and that they may be reported. So if you don't comply, really the compliance obligations are on the financial institutions. There's no risk to a client if the financial institution doesn't comply. The risk is with the financial institution, and countries have sanctions in their legislation, monetary sanctions, fines, sometimes criminal sanctions. If there's an intentional violation, you're not reporting people as you should. So there are a number of sanctions in the system designed to make sure that people comply.